Next, the latest on the midterm elections. Lee Zeldin gave his opponent a run for the money, but the results are in. Governor Kathy Hochul gets 4 more years in the Empire State. Amid the state and national races, abortion was on the ballot in several states, and the results are not good news for the pro-life movement. Then, are you buying supplements for your heart health? A new report is out saying, don't waste your money. Plus, Pope Francis calling attention to the plight of the homeless. I'm Christine Persichetti. Currents News starts right now. Hochul wins New York after a tight race with Republican candidate Lee Zeldin. The governor is claiming victory. On the national front, the balance of power in the House and the Senate surprising many who thought a red wave would tip the scales, but that's not how it ended up. Protecting abortion referendums were on the ballot in 5 states. The pro-life movement left with a list of disappointments. The results of the 2022 midterm elections are still coming in, and the nation is still waiting to see what happens in the House and Senate. Isabel Rosales breaks down some of the key races that are still up in the air and the ones that finished with surprising results.
We are thrilled at the unexpected high turnout.
Voters showing up at the polls and making their voices heard. Election day is over, but key races remain uncalled as the balance of power in the Senate rests in the hands of a few swing states. A stronger than expected showing for Democrats, blocking a so-called red wave. Still, Republicans remain cautiously optimistic about winning control of the House.
The American people are ready for a majority that will offer a new direction.
Despite the battle for control of Congress remaining unsettled, a big boost for Democrats in battleground Pennsylvania. Democrat John Fetterman defeating Republican Mehmet Oz, a Trump-endorsed candidate, in their race for Senate.
I never expected that we were going to turn these red counties blue, but we did what we needed to do.
And a significant win for Republicans in the Sunshine State. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis delivering historic margins in key Democratic territory like Miami-Dade County.
The people have delivered their verdict. Freedom is here to stay.
The critical Senate race in Georgia projected to go to a runoff on December 6th. The showdown between Republican Herschel Walker and incumbent Democratic Senator Raphael Warnock may be key to determine which party is in control.
The country is divided, and that's a lot of what we saw last night.
Isabel Rosales, Currents News.
Abortion was on the ballot in 5 states. Those include Michigan, California, Vermont, Kentucky, and Montana. So far, all of the states but Montana have voted to protect abortion. Michigan, California, and Vermont enshrining the deadly procedure into their state constitutions. Meanwhile, Kentucky rejected a measure that would have denied any state constitutional protections for abortions. Votes are still being counted in Montana, where a Born Alive bill is on the ballot. The California Catholic Conference encouraged voters to say no to Prop 1. While they were disappointed to hear it pass, they said in a statement that there is still much to be thankful for. Our deepest heartfelt gratitude to every single person who generously answered the call to raise awareness against Prop 1. Our Catholic dioceses and parishes participated in a way and at an intensity that cannot be denied, and the polling and the election results prove it. In New York, incumbent Governor Kathy Hochul has won. Republican candidate Lee Zeldin conceded Wednesday afternoon. That makes Hochul the first female elected as the governor of New York. 95% of the votes had been counted, and she was beating her Republican opponent Lee Zeldin 52% to 47%. Wednesday morning, Zeldin was holding out hope that he could still win, saying there were still more than 1.4 million uncounted votes. Zeldin conceded, saying in a statement, "I would like to congratulate New York Governor Kathy Hochul on her election to a full 4-year term. This race was a once-in-a-generation campaign with a very close margin in the bluest of blue states." And Senator Chuck Schumer won't be going anywhere. Instead, he's making history. Come January, he'll become New York's longest-serving senator. He locked in that title last night after easily defeating Republican political commentator Joe Pinion. That race lacked suspense, but Schumer is still on the edge of his seat for other reasons. If the Republicans do win control of the Senate, his tenure as majority leader will come to an end. Now to another landslide victory, this one, a New York rematch, the face-off between Nicole Malliotakis and Max Rose. Malliotakis defended her seat successfully after Rose launched his comeback bid. That leaves Malliotakis as the only Republican in New York City's House delegation. Her district is the most conservative-leaning in the city and encompasses Staten Island and a section of southern Brooklyn. So what about the future of the rest of the GOP? As we've mentioned, there wasn't a red wave that spanned the nation, but the party is now seeing a frontrunner in Ron DeSantis. The Florida governor blew away the competition last night by margins no poll could predict. DeSantis' victory sets him up for a potential rivalry with the former president, especially if Donald Trump decides to run again. Trump told reporters that DeSantis shouldn't even consider entering the race because the governor has too many secrets, ones Trump threatened to expose. To dig deeper into the results of the midterm elections, let's bring in Brian Brown, political science professor at St. John's University. Nice to see you again, Brian.
Good to be with you.
So, Brian, I just reported on the landslide wins in Florida. Let's start there. Governor DeSantis and Senator Marco Rubio both won big in Miami-Dade County, which had been a toss-up in recent elections. Is Florida losing its swing state status?
It could be. I mean, one thing about Florida, you get the results early in the evening, and it looked like it was going to be a good night for Republicans. Ron DeSantis certainly overperformed on what was kind of an underperforming evening for national Republicans. But it's a red state. It's deeper red. He performed well, creating a coalition of working class whites and Hispanics and really running an effective statewide campaign.
Yeah, and there's talk that his big win makes DeSantis the GOP favorite for the presidential race in 2024. How does this fare for former President Donald Trump?
Well, the die is cast for what looks like it's going to be a raucous primary that certainly will feature those two and maybe more. But Ron DeSantis had a good night, and he certainly becomes a front runner. And the Republican Party is going to have to do some soul searching on how they want to proceed ahead of the presidential election.
All right, now to New York. Governor Kathy Hochul is the projected winner. Republican Lee Zeldin ran on fighting crime, which, as you can see from this graphic, is up underground 41%. And he talked a lot about bail reform. So high crime wasn't enough to hand him a win. But since the race was so close, what message does this send to the governor?
Well, Lee Zeldin ran on all crime all the time, and it was an effective, although not a successful message. Now that Governor Hochul is elected, and congratulations to her making history as the first female governor of New York, you know, she really has to examine the issue of bail reform and doing something about crime. It was the closest gubernatorial race that we've seen in New York in decades. She certainly has to do something to appease the voters who came out against her and to change the narrative that she is soft on crime and the Democratic Party is soft on crime. And that really involves dealing with the state legislature and doing something effective about bail reform.
All right, as for the national races, Republicans predicted a red wave, but that's not what happened. I'm hearing people call it a ripple or a puddle. You know, what happened here?
Well, aside from New York, you know, the red wave really didn't happen. And I think what you did see was crime and inflation certainly were factors. You know, you saw a success on Long Island and some of the suburbs in the Hudson Valley, certainly some turnover in seats there. But it was not this overwhelming event that many pundits and some of the polls seem to indicate. So what I think people seem to want is leadership. And that might be something. A lot of these races are decided on very individual and granular type of personalities and issues. It was not a good night for election deniers. I think the democracy discussion is one that is serious, and people are worried about the validity of elections and that type of thing. So, you know, we're a very divided country. We went to bed a divided country. We woke up a divided country, and we really need leaders to work to pull our country together.
Amen. Brian Brown, political science professor at St. John's University. Thanks for being with us.
Always a pleasure. Thank you.
Now to another election. The U.S. bishops will be voting for a new president and vice president during their fall assembly in Baltimore next week. The president and VP will be elected to 3-year terms, which begin at the conclusion of this year's meeting. There are 10 bishops on the ballot. The winners will take over for current president Archbishop Jose Gomez and his VP, Archbishop Alan Vigneron. For a complete list of nominated candidates, go to thetablet.org. And stay with Currents News. The national correspondent for The Tablet and Crux, John Lavenberg, will be in Baltimore to cover the assembly and will join us with complete coverage every day next week. Meta, the parent company of social media giants Facebook and Instagram, has announced big layoffs. 11,000 jobs are about to get deleted. It's the largest job cut in the company's history. Meta ad sales have been affected by privacy changes and competition from rivals like TikTok. Last month, the company said its profit is about 50% of what it was in 2021. In a blog post, CEO Mark Zuckerberg apologized for the cuts. But there is a small silver lining for the thousands of people who just lost their jobs. A new law is coming to New York City that could make the hunt for work a lot easier. It's all about transparency. And Jen Sullivan tells us it could have ripple effects across the country.
Job hunting is getting a major upgrade. New laws are requiring employers to show pay ranges on job listings aimed at improving pay transparency.
This is huge. It should go further. It should be all jobs.
New York City is now requiring companies with 4 employees or more to show the money up front, listing the salary or hourly wage range for any job posting or promotion that can be performed in NYC. Meaning even if it's a remote job, employers must comply. Civil rights attorney Nancy Smith says wage transparency is a major step toward closing the wage pay gap in the U.S. and says the change will impact women and people of color the most.
94% of jobs have a wage pay gap. And still, in 2022, women make 83 cents on the dollar.
Colorado put a law like this on the books last year, and in California, a similar law goes into effect on January 1st for employers with at least 15 employees. Experts say the new laws will be far-reaching since they affect 2 of the most populous areas in the U.S., which have many remote workers. Experts saying existing employees will be able to use the laws as a bargaining tool and advocate for themselves if they're underpaid.
It's an inspiring time to look at the candidate behavior, and I think it's a frightening time for employers because many are not prepared for that power shift.
Meanwhile, a few other states like Rhode Island and Maryland have legislation that requires employers to provide salary ranges upon request. I'm Jen Sullivan.
When it comes to New York, the city's Commission on Human Rights will enforce the law. If the employers choose not to advertise, that's the first strike. They'll get a 30-day grace period to fix it. After that, penalties could go up as high as $250,000. There's a lot more news headed your way. A 1,000-pound church bell is stolen in Minnesota. The clue the thief left behind. Plus, Florida bracing itself for yet another major storm, the latest track Nicole is taking. Trying to be heart healthy, you might want to skip the supplements, and
my family and the beach were the things I miss the most about New York.
We're getting up close and personal with Brooklyn Bishop Robert Brennan.
We remember.
Developing news as we track the tropics. Tropical storm Nicole is spinning in the Atlantic and gaining speed. The storm heading to the coast, and experts predict by the time it makes landfall, it could be a Category 1 hurricane. Florida, which is still picking up the pieces from Hurricane Ian, now bracing for this rare November storm. The Sunshine State is expecting heavy rain and damaging winds, leading Governor DeSantis to declare a state of emergency. Chris Wynn has the latest.
Florida is once again bracing for another devastating storm, and this time it's expected to be historic.
I urge Floridians statewide to stay indoors in a safe structure and away from the coastline.
Nicole is forecasted to hit Florida's east coast late Wednesday into Thursday as a Category 1 hurricane. That would make it the first time in 37 years that a hurricane has made landfall in the U.S. in November.
The most recent track shows that it will make landfall in Martin County.
The region can't catch a break as it's recovering from the devastation left behind by Hurricane Ian. It's now bracing for more damage, possible tornadoes, and widespread power outages,
including tropical storm force winds as far north as Jacksonville. Winds are the main concern with Nicole, but we also expect to see some heavy rains, the potential for flash flooding, and 3 to 5 feet of storm surge in some areas.
Evacuation orders are in place for several counties, with some airports shutting down operations in preparation. A total of 23 school districts are expected to close Thursday, as officials urge all Florida residents to take precautions before it's too late.
There may come a time during and after the storm that local governments cannot immediately send first responder into harm's way to assist you. So therefore, make sure you have everything that you may need.
Chris Wynn, Currents News.
Parishes and Catholic schools in the eye of the storm are already closing down and bracing for impact. From masses to private prayers, parish activities and ministries around Florida are being canceled. Schools and offices closing today, tomorrow, and in some cases Friday in preparation of damage. Even Catholic Charities of Central Florida closed their food ministries for the next 3 days. Catholic Charities of Gainesville sent out these 3 tips to help the people of Florida. Have your hurricane guide, supply kit, and emergency contact numbers at the ready. Check and test your generator in case there's a loss of power, and make sure you secure any loose items outside. Be sure to follow Currents News as we continue to follow Tropical Storm Nicole. We'll have more updates as the storm makes its way closer to land. In Minnesota, a historic church bell was stolen from a cemetery. Board members of the gravesite discovered the bell was missing more than 3 weeks ago. The 1,000-pound bronze bell was a gift to a Lutheran church, who then sold it to the Old Apostolic Lutheran Church. After their congregation grew, they built a new and bigger house for worship and then donated it to the cemetery. Faint tracks in the grass seem to be the only clue of what may have happened to the bell.
It's like someone backed up a truck or a trailer or something. And we could see that right there was blue marks there where maybe they put a jack underneath there to lift the bell out of its cradle.
The county sheriff's office is investigating the theft. Do you take a dietary supplement for your heart health? Well, researchers are telling you to stop. A new study says some of them are not only not helping, they may actually be harmful. Mandy Gaither tells us more.
It's a leading cause of heart disease. High levels of bad cholesterol can cause blockages and lead to a heart attack or stroke. But some common supplements may not be the answer, according to a new study.
When these supplements are marketed as heart healthy or cholesterol management, it's misleading to the public.
Study author Dr. Luke Laffin says he's seen an increase in patients using supplements since he says they aren't evaluated by the U.S. Food and Drug Administration. He and his colleagues wanted to research whether there was a health benefit. They studied 6 of them: fish oil, garlic, cinnamon, turmeric, plant sterols, and red yeast rice, then compared results to a placebo and medicines commonly used to treat heart disease, like statins.
These don't work. They're not effective in terms of lowering cholesterol.
In a statement, a trade association for the supplement industry said dietary supplements are not intended to be quick fixes, and their effects may not be revealed during the course of a study that only spans 4 weeks. Dr. Laffin says not everyone needs to be on medicine to lower cholesterol. A healthy diet and exercise can help for some. But he says those who do need extra help should talk to their doctor about options. He says some supplements can also adversely interact with other medications.
They're probably not doing anything to help your quote-unquote heart health, in certain cases they may actually be harmful.
I'm Mandy Gaither.
On top of that scary study, the Food and Drug Administration now says there's a shortage of amoxicillin, an antibiotic commonly used to treat infections. The issue is specifically affecting the oral powder form of the drug, which pharmacists use to mix the liquid version that's easier to administer to kids. The FDA says this is due to manufacturing, quality programs, delays, and discontinuations. Veterans on Staten Island are remembering a teen soldier who made the ultimate sacrifice. 18-year-old Joe Merrill gave his life to save his fellow soldiers while they were fighting in Germany during World War II. For his bravery, he was given the Medal of Honor. But vets on Staten Island are going beyond that, trying to make sure his legacy is preserved. You can read all about him and their efforts in a special story in this week's tablet. Stories like Joe's are being highlighted in a special Currents News Veterans Day show. We offer a salute to the brave men and women who served our country and those who are helping them have a better life once their service is done. That's coming up this Friday, November 11th on Currents News. And to read that veteran story and to see more Veterans Day stories like it, just pick up a copy of the tablet newspaper at your local church. To get future editions sent straight to you, subscribe online at thetablet.org. Still to come on Currents News, it's art with a message, the story behind this very timely statue in St. Peter's Square. Plus, the Boy Scouts take over Currents News, and they appear to be after my job. I'll show you next. Do you have a story idea or want to share a tip? Email us at newstips@desalesmedia.org or call our 24-hour number, 718-517-3122. We'll be right back. Art is being used at the Vatican to shine a light on the plight of the homeless. Pope Francis unveiled and blessed a new sculpture in St. Peter's Square, which is dedicated to the homeless. The life-size bronze statue called Sheltering depicts a homeless person being covered by a blanket pulled over him by a flying dove. It was created by the same Canadian artist who created the Angels Unaware sculpture of migrants and refugees. The new sculpture comes just in time for the 6th World Day of the Poor. It will be celebrated on Sunday, November 13th. Pope Francis will mark the day with Mass and lunch with the poor, while the Vatican set up a mobile health clinic to provide free medical care to those without access. The Holy See is also giving away thousands of boxes of food to families in need. Take a look at this dug-up discovery made in Israel, an ancient comb which reveals the earliest known sentence ever written in an alphabet. Turns out, it's a prayer for clean hair. The sentence on the 3,700-year-old comb says, "May this tusk root out the lice of the hair and the beard." From the discovery of an ancient comb to discovering fun facts about your bishop. Every week in a new digital segment called A Minute with Bishop Brennan, Currents News gets some interesting tidbits from the Bishop of Brooklyn himself, like, does he go to the beach?
I do go to the beach, and I used to tell them in Ohio that that's probably my family and the beach were the things I miss the most.
Hear more of what Bishop Brennan said in this week's episode. The videos come out every Wednesday. Just be sure to follow Currents News online to see those episodes and the ones that will continue to come out all through November. That's at Currents News on Facebook and Currents_News on Instagram. And before we say goodbye, it has certainly been a busy couple of days, but we were still able to take some time to train some future journalists who may have been scouting out some jobs in news. These are the Boy Scouts of PAC 46 in Rockland County. They stopped by the studio Tuesday and helped us prepare our special coverage. As you can see, they tested our teleprompter and got a behind-the-scenes look at our control room and production process. So if any of them ever start a career in news, they can say it all began during the 2022 midterms. They were great. And that is Currents News. I'm Christine Persichetti. Thank you for joining us because we are putting your faith in the news. Hope to see you again next time.